Hi everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion about the amazing, inclusive queer football community that we have here in Manchester and across the UK. We've got some amazing people here who are going to talk about their experiences, positive, and some of the barriers that we're currently facing. So I'm just going to pass along the line. If everyone wants to introduce themselves with the name, the pronouns, and anything they'd like to say about themselves and their role in this space. My name is Lois, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Emily. My pronouns are she, her.
My name's Lauren, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name's Jay. My pronouns are he and they.
My name's Cameron. My pronouns are he, they.
Amazing. So just to give a little bit of an introduction, I'll introduce myself first, and then we can all maybe go in a different order just to mix it up. So I'm a player at Manchester Laces, which is Manchester's largest inclusive football club, and I'm also involved in an annual football festival called Ball Together Now, where we bring together over 60 teams from the inclusive football space from across the UK and around Europe this year as well. And yeah, over the last few years, football, and particularly the community around it, has become a really big part of my life. And I've learned so much about myself and other humans in the world through exploring football and all the communities that we've created. So I'll pass over to you, Jay.
Okay. I'm Jay. I am a trustee at Manchester Laces. I play sort of non-competitive football within the sort of inclusive football space in Manchester as part of the AF League and the Inclusive Football Collective. I also was involved in attempting to set up a space creating places for all genders to play 11-a-side football called Inclusive 11s, which is still going on. I used to play for Manchester Laces. I guess I'm a trans person. I was assigned female at birth, transitioned, and there was a period where my gender and things fit a little bit better with the sort of policies and procedures of how competitive football works, and then that wasn't true anymore, so I stopped playing then. So I've just played sort of casually since then. That's me.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to have a chat between us and understand all of our different experiences and where we come together in this kind of community that we've created. Cameron, do you want to say a few words about yourself and how football's part of your life?
Yeah, so my name's Cameron, and so I'm a huge football fan. I don't play much football, but I've always been a big football fan. I follow, I've got a season ticket for Arsenal Women, so go to them a lot. And for the last couple of years, I've been very, very lucky to follow TRUK United, who are a all-inclusive football team based mostly around London, but all across the UK, and to make a documentary about them, which is going to be showing a bit later on before the England game, and stars Emily over here.
Yeah, I did feel like I'd met a celebrity when I met Emily today, because I watched the TRUK United documentary earlier this week, and then I found out that you were going to be here today, and I was very excited to meet you. Do you want to talk about how football is part of your life?
Yeah, so football has been a part of my life for a very long time. But it mainly started when I joined TRUK United when I was 12. I weren't playing at that time as I was way too young. But I did start playing when I was 13. And they've been one of the biggest parts of my life. Oh my God. Yeah, they've been just a big part of my life, and honestly, I just couldn't imagine life without them or where I'd be, because football's helped me through some really dark and tough times, and I'm just happy to have, found them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of a common theme for a lot of people in the inclusive football space is kind of finding their people, like finding their tribe. It's something we were talking about earlier, isn't it, Lauren? And seeing each other's journeys, you know, throughout life, throughout the, you know, within the spaces that we play football within. It's kind of more important than just the football itself. Obviously, you're really good at football, so, you know, I try and not make football the big part of it because I'm not so great. But, yeah, so I'm like, it's incredible to hear that you found a space. And I guess we can come on and talk about some of the barriers that have been put in front of us. But let's hand over to Lauren to introduce herself and what football means to her.
My name's Lauren. I've just been playing football for just over a year and a half now. I started playing just because 3 years ago when I started taking hormones, I found out I had kidney cancer. And I've not played sports for over 20 years because of that, just from fear and toxic masculinity around me. But after the cancer, I thought, I'm going to try something I've not played for in so long, and I tried football. And since then, I've had one of the most wild adventures I've ever had in just 1 year alone. I've played across Europe. I've joined Manchester Laces, became one of the coaches of the beginners team. I've been in documentaries about LGBT football, and it's helped me reach out to other people as well, because I run a trans and non-binary clothes swap event to give trans people a safe space to be who they are. And all of this is because of football. It's opened up so many avenues for me to help inspire others to do better in their lives and just feel safe and smile. And again, I've played with literally everyone here as well. I have only been a goalkeeper for 1 year and 7 months, and in that period I've played now from yesterday, and probably today as well, 190 plus matches. And since then I've just felt happy, and yeah, it's just been an amazing ride because of the football.
Yeah, kind of talking about the different spaces that we all connect with football within. Perhaps it'd be useful for us to kind of talk about what makes our spaces really special. Obviously, I think we can, everyone in the room can see how important these spaces are to us, but perhaps some of the differences between the inclusive spaces that we create and collaborate on and some of the mainstream spaces that, you know, the traditional formats that people think that football has to exist within. I guess, Jay, if you want to touch upon your thoughts on some of the beautiful things that we have that are slightly different to mainstream football.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things I find most interesting and exciting about sort of being trans, I guess, is that you kind of get to live a few different lives. So I've kind of played within women's football spaces and then men's football spaces and inclusive football spaces. And I guess as a young when I was the only girl in the lads and dads in sort of Stoke in the park when I was sort of 8, you know, so quite a few different angles. I think in many ways I've been looking for a space that works for my sort of gender initially, but then also looking for then a space that also works for my personality and my well-being and all of those things is another thing. And I guess, you know, there's an argument to say that I could go and play within a men's league now and nobody would notice, potentially, other than that, other than for other structural reasons. But, you know, the men's leagues that I've attempted that quite a few times. And there's nothing against sort of the people involved in that or men in general, but just that those spaces are so hostile by comparison, and so sort of overly competitive, aggressive, and just not fun. That's the thing I end up feeling, if you know what I mean. And don't get me wrong, you know, I like a bit of argy-bargy. I'm not averse to that on the pitch. But, I end up feeling more stressed than having fun. So the thing that is so beautiful about our spaces is that you can kind of do both. You know, there are times where we definitely do get competitive and we definitely do sort of rubber each other up the wrong way, but also that is always done in community, because ultimately the thing that we share is wanting everybody to feel included. So, yeah, that's and I can kind of perhaps touch on this a little bit later, but football's been a massively healing thing for me in terms of my own transition with my experience in my body, not just as a thing that my head is attached to that I resent or that I want to change, but this thing that can do cool things and that can run fast and take free kicks or climb walls or whatever that is. So that was a really healing part of like my journey in my body as a trans person, but also just as a person. So what an inclusive and what a mixed gender football space does is give me the experience of my body in amongst other bodies that are all different, and how do we regulate that and mediate that and like do that together, if you know what I mean. So levels of competitiveness and levels of hostility are part of that as well. Like, how do we hold our bodies together and how do we take care of each other whilst also competing? So I think that's one of the most beautiful and exciting things for me about embodying those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And how we kind of collaborate and mediate those spaces is really important. Lauren, I know you're involved. If there isn't one Manchester inclusive football space that you're not involved in, honestly, I'll turn up somewhere and I'll be like, Lauren, you're here. Of course you are. So I think there's no one better to ask the question of, around the different spaces that currently exist in Manchester. And we can come on to talk about some of the barriers that perhaps will make those inclusive spaces grow, but as a result of other spaces being taken away from us. But yeah, if you want to touch upon perhaps kind of AF League, IFC, like the different spaces and what, in terms of what makes them special, what makes them different as well, touching on some of the points that Jay's made.
I'll just say we've got, in Manchester alone, we've got the AF North League, which is usually in Cheetham Hill, and the IFC League, which is down in the south. We have like 3 different days of football, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and I'm one of those idiots who plays all 3. Maybe AF League as well when I'm called on. But
the AF League stands for Alternative Football League, and it's not really a coincidence that it's a flip on the FA.
But having those spaces has just been like really helpful, because when I started getting back into football, I didn't feel comfortable with some of the places I wanted to try and go into until someone suggested going to Union Manchester, which was a local All Abilities LGBTQ team with links to AF North and IFC. And just the array of people that were there, we had there's cis women, there's non-binary, trans men, trans women, but we're all together. We were just there to play the game. And it just made me feel comfortable as a player to just go out there and just enjoy myself and also be competitive without any worry that someone's going to say anything against me or anyone else. And it's just been uplifting because it's helped me become more, not just competitive, but just more confident in myself. And having those spaces is helpful for anyone who's wanting to try football, but feeling like there isn't a place for them. And unfortunately, with the FA ban that came in, I'm one of the players that also was hit by the ban, because I played for in the Flexi League with Manchester Laces Bronze, and that was probably one of the hardest things that's hit me in a few years. The cancer sucked, but having something taken away from me that I earned and put all the effort in was like the hardest thing to ever take in my life. But knowing that I still had these spaces in AF and IFC, and also other teams and teammates who supported me being in these leagues, was the most supportive thing I've ever experienced, because we know that they're always going to be there for us when we have the dark periods, and they're going to fight for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you in the room that are kind of not familiar with some of the points that Lauren just touched upon there, obviously we're all really excited to watch the Lionesses play at 5 o'clock. But you know, a lot of people have recently been kind of pushed out of the FA's mainstream football formats. Following the Supreme Court ruling, the FA have made the decision that trans people can no longer play in those spaces. So, yeah, that's been kind of a massive like kick to our community. But I hope that we can push back and keep just creating and providing alternative spaces. I know, Emily, you've been impacted by that. Obviously, you've touched upon how important TRUK United has been to you in providing a space. I guess, do you want to talk a little bit about how the recent decisions have impacted you? And also, I know you've been talking about the current kind of lack of spaces for people under 18 as well. I mean, we can all sit here and really kind of promote these amazing spaces for adults in Manchester, but there's a massive gap. I think you've been kind of talking to us about earlier. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, yeah, so to start off with the FA ban, that had really affected me because I just started my first season playing under, you know, like a professional style footballing team, and you know, I was working really hard, you know, week in, week out. I'd earned me place into starting like every single game, where I'd finished the season with the joint most starts, which you know, I was really proud of, and you know, I was just like loving my time with the team and just the constant week in, week out football. You know, just the variations of people in the community as well, getting to experience that was really great. And it was just getting towards the end of the season, you know, I was getting excited to catch a break because I was getting really tired, playing through injuries. And it just came out of nowhere. Like, we were, at the time, knew someone who had just retired from football altogether because they said they knew it was coming. They just kind of expected that it was going to happen. And only weeks later did the ban get put into place, and I just put my blood test in as well to, you know, get FA approved to, you know, try and secure my safety at the team. And funnily enough, we didn't really hear back till recently about that, which was disappointing. Yeah. And it was it really impacted me because it was like all of my team didn't want me to go, and it was like it was a really tough goodbye. And you got to see it yourself. It was really tough.
Yeah, Emily was incredibly brave and invited. So we finished the film in March and we released it in March, and then obviously with everything that's happened, we are continuing to film the team to you know to kind of show what's happening and maybe extend the film out. But Emily was very brave and invited us up for what turned out to be her last football match. And as to what Emily was saying there, we were so struck by when we arrived. It was a team that, you know, loved Emily, could not understand why this was happening. You know, players and parents alike. Also a team, I'm right in saying that sometimes they're not even able to field 11 players sometimes. I think you didn't have any subs that day. So, you know, you're taking away, not only are you taking away, Emily's a fantastic footballer, so you're taking away a brilliant footballer, but, you know, you're disconnecting someone from that community and all those opportunities that come with it. So it's a complete disgrace, and it's completely ill thought out and not in touch with the reality of what happens and at a grassroots level.
Yeah, for those of you in the room from Manchester Laces, we've kind of attended quite a few of what were people's last opportunities to play in that competitive league format through the FA, and it's been, you know, repeatedly seeing, you know, a lot of emotion, a lot of anger, a lot of upset. I don't know, Lauren, obviously, do you want to talk about your experience with that and, yeah, how you see kind of the next few months panning out and the spaces you want to push to fight for?
So yeah, the day that it actually came out from the FA that we were banned, yeah, it was probably one of the darkest days I've had in a while. And it was the same day that we actually had Lacey's training as well. And in the pit, my stomach was like, I can't do this. I'm going to be walking out, seeing people just, I'm never going to be able to play with again. And I made such a connection with my team that I was looking forward to the next season. When I went on there, I was coaching the Lacey's Reds, and everyone was like coming up to me, giving me hugs and stuff, saying like, it's bullshit. There's everything that's happened. We're here for you. And then my own team, my coach actually coming up to me and saying, no matter what happens, Lauren, you are bronze through and through. You're always going to be here. And just literally everyone just coming up and just in a circle, just giving me a hug was like the most supportive thing, even though it still hurt because it was so fresh. It hurt me, and it's hard to get out the words at the same time because I'm pushing 40 years old. I've only just come back to football, so I'm technically near the end of what I can actually do with my body. I'm already feeling it now, but that's me because of how I goalkeep. I throw my body everywhere. But as younger generations, like Emily, there's like a few players at Lacey's who they've had 1 or 2 seasons, and that's now been taken away from them. And that's more heartbreaking to me than what's happening to myself, because they still have so many years in front of them to play in teams that they deserve to be playing with. So with my future, I've been helping out with Football versus Transphobia to try and work on something so we and the younger generation have a safe space and can actually play football where they deserve to be without the hate that we are getting in the community. And I'm just going to keep on fighting with that over and over again, and I'm going to do other things as well that I'm going to bring up later on that's going to help them in the future.
There's so many positives. I mean, we've talked there about the reality of the situation. I don't want us to start kind of just straight pivoting to the positives, but I do think like it's good for us to platform all of the great things that are happening. Obviously, you've been observing TRUK United's work. Obviously, I got a sneak peek of that through watching the documentary, and I hope that lots of you here can stick around to watch it. It's really inspirational. Like, what do you see from the TRUK United community that's been created, and things that exist outside of all of that negative stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's definitely been something, just the last point on that, it's something we've struggled with since we finished the film, and then a month later the ban happened, is with the film we really did want to capture that joy of it. Yeah. And there's been sometimes in the last month or so we thought that, you know, it almost now feels a little bit out of step with what the reality is, but we are really excited that we were able to capture that, because for me and my co-director Charlie and the whole film team, like coming down to TRUK, it's just so fun. I mean, you were both there was a match on Sunday, wasn't it? And I think Lucy, who's such an incredible trailblazer who set up the team, she is just the best at making the most fun days, basically. She, like, you know, it's like anyone can come along and it's all about getting on the pitch and having a good time. And that's what we really wanted to capture, that kind of fun element, that slightly chaotic element that comes with grassroots football as well. Like, our film starts with, you know, a match potentially being rained off and Lucy kind of running to the shed to get all the footballs, and like showing that kind of side of it, that again, that these community events don't happen without someone putting in a lot of work and a lot of graft. So yeah, that's really what we wanted to capture, was the joy, and you know, the team just gave us that in spades.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to touch on all the hard work that does go on behind the scenes to make these communities happen. I think there's some like incredible projects that people have dreams of creating in this inclusive football space. The funding backdrop is kind of against us. A lot of funding towards LGBTQ plus projects is slowly dwindling, so that's a fight for us, which means that we're ever kind of reliant on volunteer input. And like you said, you see people there, you know, in the pouring rain, dragging bags of balls, and that is the reality behind it. But people are doing that because they believe in all that kind of joy that can be created from that community. Jay, something we talked about earlier, kind of, I guess, under that phrase of queering football and inclusive football, I think within that, those words encompass so many different things, whether that's around ability, body type, background, gender, sexuality. Like, do you want to kind of share some thoughts around that joy that comes from all of those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm going to try not to slip back into my sociology degree and take the concept of queering too literally. But yeah, I guess it's about like living between outside of the rigidity and within the grey area of these things. And I think in reality, you know, grassroots football is that, really, or it ought to be. And it often is, even if you're not trying to, because it is so much people, you know, just showing up, doing it, making it happen. And the realities of life, you know, outside of funding, outside of structure of like a bigger organization is messy. And but I think, yeah, it's that sort of, I mean, Ball Together Now, which is the festival that Lois organises, that she spoke about at the beginning, is an incredible, like, utopia of inclusive football. You know, there are lots of different bodies, lots of different ages, lots of different abilities, and it works. And that's the amazing thing about it, is that you can make that work when you want to. I think a lot of what's really frustrating is a lot of the sort of questions that people ask about how these spaces should be are like intellectual questions or theoretical or cognitive. And actually, when you're in them and you all share a value set, yes, there are complexities, as there are in any community, and there are things to tease out and there are challenges and disagreements, but it can work and it can be functional and generative in the way that communities are. It doesn't have to be, should we? And I think, you know, with any big sort of public body, there's a level of like regulation and structure and bureaucracy that's kind of defeating of that sort of natural community energy to an extent. But the sort of the insistence on that rigidity and the inflexibility, whilst also sort of doing that under the guise of this concept that football's for everyone. I mean, that's...
Yeah, they really need to lose that tagline.
They need to stop saying that loud.
Like, that just needs to be vetoed, doesn't it? Football for all, really,
Football for all, yeah.
is a kind of a fake statement at this point. Yeah, I think...
But it's
looking
exciting.
Looking at that, we've kind of a lot of us were involved and still are involved in some level with the FA structures, because it was often a route to allow people that wanted to go down the competitive route of football to participate in that. I think something that we're all passionate about is how we can now use this as a bit of an impetus, a bit of a push to create our own layers, but without having too much of that rigidity and actually living by the statement of football for all. You know, we've seen Ball Together Now grow from 30 teams in its first year to 62 teams in its third year. We've seen the Inclusive Football Collective League and the Alternative Football League grow from being 4 teams to probably like 30 teams across all of them. And I guess we've been talking around, you know, the desire to have something for people under 18 as well. And there's quite a bit of work and projects for us to do there. You know, looking at one of the big challenges we faced through losing our ability to work with the FA, also it was choosing to discontinue working with the FA, I think is a more clear statement, because we did choose to disaffiliate with them in a lot of cases, is things like referees. They kind of have the hands clenched around the ability to be accredited as a referee. So, yeah, some thoughts around what different kind of structures we'd like to set up, whether that's something for under 18s, if you want to touch on that, and then kind of just go down the line and talk about what we see for the future. You know, you'll see through TRUK United's eyes kind of what they see for the future. I'm sure they've had inundated with people wanting to come and play and be part of that, which is really exciting. But
Me being one of them, because I made my debut on Sunday, and it's been one of my goals to actually play for them. And just being on the pitch with like Emily herself and a few others that I knew beforehand, and messages from people just saying like, you will love it.
Absolutely. And we need to create more spaces like that, but within structures that we're comfortable with and that we're designing, not ones that are put upon us by this kind of structure that actually doesn't consult with us at all. Emily, if you want to kind of say a few words around what this should be for young people.
Well, yeah, because I think it's really, really a struggle for young people in, certain spaces at the minute. Because I was lucky enough myself to have found TRUK at such a young age, and, just like how important that space has been to me. It's really important. I think it's really important as well that people younger and my age have that space, and it's been an issue for a very long time, because I've now been pushed out of the professional route I wanted to take, and I've still got TRUK United, which I've kind of fell back onto, and I really love playing for TRUK, and they've been my family since the early days, and
they're not right round the corner, are they?
No.
You've got to travel a little bit.
Yeah, all the way up into London from Liverpool, which is a struggle to do all the time. When the team I was playing for just up the road, I can't do that anymore. After speaking with the team for quite a bit, they've made sure that I still train, and I'm going to show up to matches as just a little fan. But I think it's been a bit of a struggle for young people to find spaces, where they can feel comfortable in themselves, and to find other young people, to build friends and relationships, and have connections, and it's just not been looked at recently of how to get young people into these certain spaces. I mean, recently, because I don't want to name names, I was going to come down for a match about the FA ban, and they didn't want me to come and play because I was under 18, and that really hurt. That was like just a bit painful.
Yeah, we need to be supporting young people within our space, and I guess there's only so far that young people can do that on their own. They can be a big part in creating that vision and what that should look like. But yeah, I guess to all the adults in the room that have got kind of capacity and want to support this space, there's definitely a real demand there, and you absolutely deserve that. So yeah, keep fighting and advocating for young people in that space. Jay, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think like the spaces I'd love to see, because I think this issue has got so unnecessarily complicated. Like mixed football exists, right? That's not a groundbreaking concept. That is insurable. It happens. The FA, I don't know what the FA stands on it, but it exists with FA structures. Yeah, yes. So, yes, like, I don't know why this needs to be more complicated than that. Even if we were to sort of acknowledge some of the concerns around, different bodies being in the same space, I would love to see, like, the sort of simplicity of thought around the issue that we can kind of, that other sports can make when we take that leap, when we think about, like, men and women playing together, cis men and
People
cis
just
women.
want to show up with
Yeah.
the football boots or the trainers
Yeah.
and kick a ball about and feel really great at the end of it. Like, it doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
No, it doesn't.
It's
And
about more than the actual sport. It's about the community.
the frustrating thing for me, I suppose, and where it's sort of why I like the idea of that, of a mixed football space, is one, because it bypasses this issue of trans people particularly, and those bodies being the ones that we particularly need to regulate within a football space. But also, the assumption of the sort of regulation is that everybody's in that space to sort of, it's not a wrestling match. You know, we should be regulating our bodies, no matter what they are, when we're playing sport with each other, so that we don't hurt each other. And there is an assumption, or there should be an assumption, that we all want to do that because we don't want to injure each other. So if what we're doing is building our regulations of the sport around an assumption that if we didn't, we do as much harm to each other as possible, then that's really, that's not, I don't want that, you know? And I suppose what being in these spaces has been exciting around sort of intellectually is around having those conversations about how we be together. And do we win at all costs? Is that what we want? Because the reality is that, like, I understand that in pro sport, that's, you know, there's a space for that. But we aren't talking about professional athletes being affected by this ruling. We're talking about grassroots people who do it for health, who do it for well-being, who do it for community. Those are the people that's been excluded from those spaces. So, yeah, like, this issue's just got way out of hand for me. So, yeah, mixed football spaces I'd like.
What's the phrase that you use in Inclusive 11s?
Conscious competition.
Yeah, do you want to describe that a little bit and how that works in the Inclusive 11? Maybe explain to people a little bit more about Inclusive 11s.
Yeah, so Inclusive 11s is a project we set up a couple of years ago that's still ongoing in Manchester around trying to create all-gender 11-a-side spaces. 11-a-side football is particularly hard to access, I think, for a beginner, and also just in general, because it is where it's the most physical, the most competitive, and there's hostility, and, you know, it's hard work as well, to be fair. It's physically difficult. So I think it's not, if you're unconfident, it's a difficult space to access. It also, all of the 11-a-side football that goes on is FA affiliated. So, I say all, but, you know, within league structures and that sort of thing, there's not really an alternative. We were attempting to create one. And we were talking about how we do this and how we make this safe. And, yeah, we came up with this concept of conscious competition, which is sort of similar to what I was talking about a minute ago, where it's around, yes, we are competitive, but to what extent, and doing that consciously, not in a mindless sort of win at all costs, which most people do anyway when they're engaging in sport, because most people are not so blinded by the need to win that, you know, they'll lose their rational capacities. But it does happen, you know, it happens to us all sometimes. So I guess it's about encouraging a conversation about, like, how we do that, who is there, because it's not like having a blanket rule. It's like, who's here right now, what's their abilities, and how can we find a compromise together that means as many of us as possible can be included and able to play a game that is satisfying and safe, and and finding that balance, which will be different with every set of 22 people on a pitch. So,
and as that grows, you know, we could, you know, have a vision in the future of having multiple 11-a-side spaces running in parallel of different abilities, in which case it's easier to kind of split out. But some people want to be in that mixed ability space. They just want to be playing with their mates, you know, meeting new people each week. And I absolutely love that kind of conscious competition statement that you arrived at. Cameron, do you want to talk about a little bit of kind of what you see in terms of the future within the TRUK United space? Because, yeah, undoubtedly it will grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, obviously coming at this from a filmmaking point of view rather than being kind of sort of in the grassroots football setup. But, you know, I know, and Emily's going to be a big part of this, I know Lucy and TRUK want to keep growing. I think Lucy's got a concept of kind of taking TRUK all over the UK and all over the world. And, you know, again, sort of just taking that energy of, again, what really drew us to TRUK was that, you know, each match day is just super fun. You know, it's against a different opposition. You know, it might have kind of different. It might be for trans mass people, trans femme, or it might just be all inclusive. Might be cis allies, like, and I think that that can only be a good thing. You know, to include. I think that on top of the all-inclusive element, I think also because also Lucy manages Sutton United Women as well, and I think also what I imagine will continue is this hopefully opening up a pathway to professional sport as well, which again, what's been so brutal about the FA ban is closing that off for a lot of people like Emily for the moment. And I think it's important to balance that inclusivity with, like, you know, there are careers here to do as well, and, you know, and opportunities to work in football. And I think that's what Lucy with TRUK has shown so well is, you know, you can have the fun of the games, but also, you know, through her career, it shows also, you know, there is a route to professional football as well.
Absolutely, and I think what we probably all want to kind of put out to the audience is, you know, we want to grow this space. We've got an open door. We're not wanting to work kind of in silo and separate to teams that are currently within that FA structure. We want to kind of collaborate. We want to provide opportunities. You know, whatever Emily sees for her future, we want that to be an opportunity for her. So, yeah, I feel like it's a really dark time in a lot of ways, but actually we can see a lot of positives. And I think Jay describing Ball Together now as a utopia, that's like such a lovely way to see it. But there is just a lot of smiling faces and a lot of happiness and very, very little of people complaining about anything because they were just having a great time. The weather did help. We did have amazing sunshine, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree with you with Ball Together now. As someone who's been a part of it for 2 years as staff and playing at the same time, yes, I know I'm insane doing that. But just knowing that everyone around us was just there to play the game and just enjoy being there was more important than anything else, because there was no hate or anything. No one saying, like, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be playing this. It was just all of us wanting to win and have a good time. And that was the most important thing that I took away from that entire event. And that's why I keep coming back and helping out and promoting it to other teams to come and join. Like, I'm trying to get TRUK to have a team at some point as well. And I've been in contact with other teams now as well because of how positive Ball Together now was in my life and theirs.
And I think having all of the kind of community elements wrapping around the football is really important. We've got Jade in the audience who was the lead on the queer blind date that we ran as well. So I think it's just showing that our community is much bigger than the kicking of a football around the pitch. It provides a massive kind of mental health support for people, a sense of belonging, finding your people that, you know, whether you're finding those people at age 20 or at age 60, we're just really, like, welcoming of people and want to create that positive space. Fab. Well, thank you all for giving up an hour of your time and listening to us. And if you want to connect or chat about any of the projects that we've talked about, just come and find us after this. Thank you, everyone.